I'm Kathy Miller. I'm the leader of this organization called the Partnership for Undergraduate Life Sciences Education, which I will tell you a little bit about and how we've implemented Sociocracy in it. My background is that I'm a educator. I'm a professor of biology at Washington University in St. Louis, and this group that I'm going to tell you about is composed of people like me, faculty from a variety of educational institutions from around the US that are involved in trying to improve undergraduate education in the life sciences. Okay, so I thought I would just start formally with the vision and mission of the organization. We are trying to make sure that all the students that we interact with come away from college as educated citizens who know what science is and can reason and use science to approach the world. And in particular, we're interested in promoting the development of scientists that are reflective of the diversity of our society and that are interested in applying their science in wonderful ways to help the world. So I'm going to tell you how we got started in just a minute after I go over this background. Oh, and I wanted to make say one thing or two things. If you have a question or a comment, please interrupt me, raise your hand or something so that I'd be happy to stop. And I don't want this just to be me speaking. I would love to hear your comments and questions. And also, I wanted to tell Jerry, and I don't know if Sheila is here or not, she was going to be here, that Sheila and Jerry were the facilitators who helped us implement Sociocracy. And I'm going to be talking about how we did that, and I'd welcome any comments that either of them had to say about what we did and what we're doing in this organization, because they're very familiar with our process and really were essential for us to implement this in our organization.
I am here, Kathy.
Hi, Sheila. All right, so Pulse really is organized, oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. Pulse is organized around several ideas. The first is we really want to improve undergraduate student experience and success in the sciences. And we want to do that through helping educators really use effective teaching and learning practices. And as you may, I don't know if you're familiar or not, but in the college classroom, it's not typical that people teaching actually have very much training in teaching. And they also often don't know about the literature, the scholarly literature that's on teaching and learning that helps us understand how people learn so that we can teach in effective ways. And this has become a large issue in higher education to try and get the educators across higher education to really implement strategies with students that have been shown to be very effective, and that especially are effective for all students from all demographic backgrounds. Oftentimes you'll hear about students from racial and ethnic minorities or socioeconomically challenged students that struggle in college. These kinds of techniques help to level the playing field so everybody has a chance to work to their greatest potential. So we're very interested in getting these kinds of practices adopted across higher education. We seek to work with departments, so academic departments at universities and colleges. And we do that because this is where a lot of decision-making happens about the curriculum, about students, and about faculty. And by engaging with whole departments, we feel like we have a better chance of having more implementation of effective practices rather than working with individual faculty. We promote the use of assessment, and we are very engaged in teaching people about cycles of continuous improvement so they can assess what they're doing, whether it's effective, and then use that information to modify and test again, and see if the changes that they've made have made a difference. And very importantly, a lot of our strategies that we use with departments seek to improve communication and collaboration within the department. And we feel this is a really important part also of making effective programs for students, is to have a collaboration of the faculty across the department that's developing and presenting these programs. So our programs, I'm just going to tell you very briefly what our programs are. We have 3 main active programs. One is called the Ambassadors Program, and this is where a group of 2 or 3 trained facilitators go to a university, are invited to work with a department, or sometimes it's more like a division, a STEM division, as opposed to just a department. And they conduct a 2-day workshop in which the participants develop a common vision for what they would like to see their program be. And then they make a plan about how they're going to achieve that vision, thinking about both the facilitators and barriers that might be part of what they need to consider as they're developing and implementing this program. We also have 5 regional networks, and these are in 5 different regions of the country, and we hold workshops or institutes in those regions at which teams from various academic departments come and learn about organizational change and learn about collaboration strategies, and they also create action plans so that they can go back to their departments and work with others in their departments to develop programs that are more effective. And third, we have what we call a recognition program, and this is a program in which we have developed rubrics that evaluate the kinds of teaching and learning practices that are happening in those departments, and then we evaluate that, and then we recognize departments that have progressed in the implementation of these evidence-based teaching and learning practices. And then finally, we have a website where we've aggregated a lot of information related to these things, and anybody can go there and look at some of the information. Okay, so that's what the organization does. How did we start? Well, in 2012, a group of education program officers from funding agencies that fund educational grant that are involved in developing various curricular types of interventions and that sort of thing. A group of these funding program officers got together and had been talking about how, despite the fact they had spent a lot of money on educational, given money to people for to develop educational programs that were effective, still at the undergraduate level, a lot of those kinds of programs weren't being disseminated and adopted, and teaching was largely remaining the same as it had been for hundreds of years in the universities. And so they wanted to figure out ways to catalyze change in undergraduate teaching and learning. And so they recruited department chairs and deans, so people who had experience in the sort of administrative capacity in a university setting, that also were interested in teaching and learning and had experience with evidence-based teaching and learning, and bring them together and have them try and identify some strategies for accelerating change in teaching and learning. So they had an application that people interested in this filled out, and they selected 40 people from institutions of all types across the US. So community college faculty, liberal arts college faculty, research university faculty, comprehensive university faculty, all people from all those types of institutions were all part of the pool, and they selected people from all those institution types to be this group. And they basically brought us together. We were pretty much complete strangers. We'd never met each other. And put us in a workshop and said, okay, we want you to, identify strategies for causing this change to happen over the next year, and go to it. So we started working together, trying to brainstorm ideas, and we had some facilitation in that first meeting that was, using strategies that helped us get to know each other and to sort of brainstorm ideas. But basically, we were set free at the end of that meeting to then work remotely, because we were scattered all over the country, on the various ideas that had evolved during our first meeting. At the end of that year, the fellows really felt like they didn't want to just write a report or report back on some strategies. They actually wanted to try some things. And so we applied for funding from the National Science Foundation to implement pilots of some of the ideas that we had talked about, and we began doing that in 2013. This is a group of us as of 2016. We have an annual meeting, and this picture is taken at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Conference Center, where we meet annually. And I'm going to show you more pictures that show how we implemented Sociocracy in a minute. In 2016, we decided to incorporate as an educational nonprofit, and now we are developing a sort of fee-for-service model in which we do these kinds of activities by charging fees for our services, and we're in the process of doing that. We currently have about 45 active fellows. Some of the original fellows are no longer active, but we've brought in cohorts of additional people over the last few years. Okay, so there's the fellows. So how did we come to adopt Sociocracy? The foundation of this group, as you just heard, was completely non-hierarchical. We were recruited by these program officers, but we were left as a group of peers to work together on implementing, developing and implementing these ideas about teaching and learning. And so initially we had absolutely no structure whatsoever. There was no assigned leader, there was no roles for anybody. Everybody just came in equal, and there was really no way to naturally assign any kind of hierarchical structure. We were also envisioned as a temporary group. It was supposed to be a 9-month time to brainstorm and develop our ideas. And when we started working on these ideas that came out, projects developed, and different people were more or less invested in the different projects. And so there were groups of people working on different ideas. And each of those projects addressed the issue of teaching and learning in life sciences in somewhat different ways, but they were very complementary and synergistic with each other. We really realized that coordinating the efforts of these different projects was going to be important for us to achieve the outcome that we wanted, which was changing the way teaching and learning happened at the undergraduate level. And so we started to think about, well, how do we coordinate these things? We have no governance structure. We don't have anything. We also had developed quite a strong camaraderie and respect for each other over the first year or so. And so it was a really collegial group in which we shared ideas and really respected each other's views. So we wanted to avoid our projects falling into just separate groups of people working on separate things and remain together. We decided we needed to become essentially an ongoing operation, and we wanted to be independent of the group of program officers that recruited us. We wanted to do what we wanted to do, and we needed to establish a governance structure, and we wanted the governance structure to honor the values, the respect, and the relationships that we had developed already in the organization during essentially the first year. And so we started researching ways we could organize ourselves. And we happened to have a couple people who were involved with Quaker organizations, and they were explaining how Quaker principles worked, and that seemed quite attractive. And we had one person who knew something about an organization that used sociocracy. And so we just started to research into sociocracy. Sorry. There. Okay, why sociocracy? Well, it really fit us. It really fit us well. We were entirely non-hierarchical, so there was no real structure there to start with. The practices that we promote in teaching and learning practices that promote student success actually have a lot of resonance with the principles of sociocracy. So collaborative work, helping each voice be heard, taking personal responsibility, equity, all sorts of things that sociocracy promotes is also part of what we were trying to do with our students. And so we naturally sort of gravitated towards those types of strategies and practices when we were working together. And so again, it was quite a natural fit. We also, in the programs that we have developed, are working with departments, and a lot of our focus is on development of skills for decision-making and interaction in those departments, again, that empower all voices and create buy-in for progress towards the goals, shared goals. And again, we felt that this, that when we learned about sociocracy, that those principles resonated with what we are trying to do with the departments that we worked with. So we dove in whole hog and decided to ask the Sociocracy Consulting Group to come and help us figure out how to implement sociocracy. And we did that in 2014. We had an in-person meeting of all the fellows, and we worked with Jerry and Sheila for about 6 months prior to that. No, 3 months prior to that meeting, something like that. A couple months prior to that meeting, a group of us worked with them to start figuring out how we could structure ourselves and how we could implement this. And then they came and facilitated this 3-day meeting to help us both learn sociocracy and also implement it into our structure. I'm showing you a picture that was generated during this meeting. We had a graphic artist record the meeting. And so this was this was on the first day. This is sort of an overview of what the meeting, we had a session that was an overview of what we were going to try to do to get everybody on the page. And as you'll see here, that's me. I was one of the people who was instrumental in getting this started in the organization, and we were working with Sheila and Jerry. And so Sheila and I were giving the introduction about what we were going to be doing during the meeting. And then of course you can see all this information as kind of an overview of sociocracy and a variety of things that we were going to do during the meeting laid out here, talking about incorporating as a 501c3, talking about how do we assess, you know, our effectiveness, all sorts of things like that. Anyway, I thought this was it was really fun to go back and find this picture and remember the 3 or 4 days in which we spent working to really implement sociocracy into our organization. There's some pictures of us learning about this and doing circle meetings and elections and everything that we needed to do to have our organization be structured in a sociocratic manner. We had quite a long session in which we learned a lot of the principles of sociocracy, the rapid prototyping, that resonated very much with us because that's really familiar to scientists, to try something, develop an experiment, try it, get some results, look at the results, refine that, and go back again and try again. And so we went through all sorts of things to help us understand how it all worked during this meeting. Okay, so so we set up a sociocratic organizational structure. Again, we didn't really have any structure. We had what was called the Fellows Council, which was 6 people who were kind of elected by the group to help to manage what was going on, but otherwise we didn't really have any structure. And so with the help of our consultants, we, Fellows Council and some other people worked to develop this structure where we had departmental circles that populated by double linking the Fellows Council. And then we had a bunch of working groups that carried out the various activities that we were engaged in that were represented in these departmental circles by double linking as well. And and then we had over here this all fellows circle. The Fellows Council was sort of the executive committee, of course, but there were a lot of things where we wanted buy-in from everyone. And so for many decisions, they would come up through the structure to the Fellows Council, but then we would consult with everyone and agree, have consent of everyone to those policies and procedures that needed that kind of buy-in. And so every member of the organization is part of the All Fellows Circle, and every member of the organization was in at least one, usually more than one of these lower circles. We use all the processes of sociocracy, including sociocratic elections, rounds, policy proposals, and consent, and all of that. And we pretty much for all these years since 2014 have been using all those procedures pretty much faithfully to the way we were taught them. Every 2 years we reevaluate whether our circle structure is working. It's about every 2 years. We have a term of 2 years on our circle structure. And so then we look at it every 2 years and ask if it's working. And every 2 years we've been changing it slightly, looking at parts that don't work well and changing them out to be more effective. So our revised structure in 2016 had a change where we reorganized some of the departments, and we also created this assessment circle that linked directly to Fellows Council as another department. And this is composed of representatives from all of the circles that are involved directly in generating data by putting on programming and collecting data on the impact of those programs. And we felt that this circle needed to be linked to every other circle. This is not a double linkage because the circle would get too big. So there's only one representative from each of these circles to the assessment circle. But otherwise, the rest of it is a typical sociocratic system. So I wanted to just stop and soon and just let people ask questions, but I wanted to share just a couple of things that we learned. First of all, I think our adoption of sociocracy had a powerful impact on us and really helped us relate well to each other. And we have developed very deep relationships that are very valuable to all of us. And that Sociocracy really has kept us able to maintain those relationships. And in my opinion, Pulse would really no longer be an ongoing organization if we had not adopted these principles of processes. I just don't think we would have devolved into individual efforts going our own directions. So that's been really good. One of the really most important things that we realized is that the Sociocratic process of clarifying questions and quick reactions using rounds is really important so that we explore ideas before we get into judgment of them. And that's absolutely critical for us to really function as an organization. And as Jerry has told us many times, when the going gets tough, do a round. That's worked for us. So, anybody have questions or comments? Sheila, Jerry, any comments on what I said? You were there for the beginning.
Yeah, I want to a couple of things. One was that that meeting where we, in a sense, taught sociocracy wasn't actually just teaching sociocracy. We were actually doing the work. You know, we were teaching sociocracy as we went along in kind of creating the structure of Pulse, but also supporting what Pulse was doing in setting up its next steps. So we were making decisions in the sociocratic way about what Pulse was, you know, about what Pulse was doing. So it was very much a working meeting, not just a training session. That was one thing. And the other is that Pulse did an evaluation, I don't know if it was a year after or some period of time after the implementation. And it was a pretty thorough evaluation. And you know what I'm remembering right now is some of the key piece that I'm remembering is leadership. You know, that yes, it worked, but one of the benefits was the spread of leadership. That there were more people involved in leadership as a result because of, you know, all these different circles needed to have their own people playing roles, smaller groups, people being able to really shine and show up. And sometimes unexpected people. One of the kind of magical moments in that first weekend that we did together was a selection process that we did as a fishbowl where everybody else got to watch one group. And the person who was selected was a surprise. It was not one of the kind of, it wasn't one of the men who, you know, like, you know, wasn't one of those people who typically seem to be a leader, but surprisingly got quite a few nominations from people because she was very well respected. And it was kind of like, wow, somebody can show, somebody not only can be witnessed as a leader through this process that isn't the usual kind of popularity contest or, you know, power dynamics or something else. And that was, that was a pretty significant moment in realizing the value of
partly it's learning by doing
and doing it in the way.
Here you see
check.
Our circles.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Every student.
I just want to give another example of what Jerry was saying, but in addition to the training, they were really learning by doing. So we would teach meeting processes in the process of looking at their actual issues and of teaching them how to do elections in the various circles. There were 2 points in that retreat that really stood out in my mind. One was the example Jerry gave of selecting their leaders. I remember as people realized the power of that, and as new leaders were emerging, they were being recognized for the leadership they were already taking, but they didn't have they weren't informal roles before that. I remember a lot of tears in the room, and there were tears of joy at having seen this leadership emerge before their eyes. The other moment that stands out for me is we were teaching about vision, mission, and aim, and one of the fellows suddenly leaped up and said, "We need to redo our vision and mission," and so they put some flip charts on the dining room, and every time there was a break, there would be people congregating around, and by the end of the 3 days, they had redone their vision vision, mission, and aim. It was quite a remarkable organic process. I think they tweaked it a little bit more since then, but in a few days after the retreat, but it was just a lovely, lovely thing to witness.
So I don't know if we have a little more. Do we have more time still?
We have got another minute and a half here. So
okay. Well, somebody asked the question, examples of the going gets tough, and I'd like to give an example of that. So in one of our meetings subsequent to adopting this, a group had made a proposal that we thought, and that we had done a lot of work crafting, and we had shared around, and when we got to our consent round, we had paramount objections, and it was really surprising because we thought we had gotten a clear signal that this was going to be okay. And so we stopped, and we sort of took a step back, and we did a round of trying to really get a feel for what was going on and why there were paramount objections and what exactly was happening. Because even though people could state a paramount objective, sometimes it took more discussion, to get there, to really understand it. And so then we went back, and that group went back and crafted the proposal in a way that got around that. And the next day we were able to have that proposal consented to. It was really pretty cool.
There's a question about money. How's money involved with Pulse?
Up until recently, we've had some grant funding for these activities from the National Science Foundation. And so those were all led by individuals whose institutions were responsible. So those principal investigators on those grants had the responsibility of managing the money. We've only recently started to have funds come into the organization, and we have a treasurer who helps to manage the money, and we are setting up fee services and stuff. We now are able to pay small stipends. We've been an entirely volunteer organization. Everybody has a day job, like me, a professor of biology somewhere, or another kind of professor somewhere. And so it's all been volunteer, but now we're trying to be able to pay people stipends for the work that they do and as facilitators and that sort of thing. And we're getting there. We're just starting to wrestle with the financial side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we need to wrap up here. I want to one last comment from me, and Kathy sort of said it, but what I've appreciated about Pulse is that the structure of the organization was not set in stone. It was created, but then it can always keep evolving. That's an important really part for me to notice, to witness that in how Pulse's story.